have a spare copy of the agenda, for some reason I can't get it online.
Oh, we have plenty, yep. I don't know where they ended up, but,
Where they end up?
did you have a copy of the agenda, Tom?
I got a couple extra over here.
I had a whole bunch of.
Piled them
We
up.
just routed a whole pile through.
Yeah,
Did you
so-
take them
oh,
all?
they're
and
over
give
there
them-
somewhere.
I
Yeah.
snatched them up and. Start
I
asking
know.
me for the 16 font when I know that.
But that's just on the computer, so.
All right,
Well, we can call the meeting to order, I guess, and
yes, we can. And we shall do so at 6:35. And first order of business is an official welcome to Greg,
no, digitally recorded.
Patty, and a reminder that this meeting is being digitally recorded and broadcast live.
Thanks.
Glad everybody could make it this evening. 13,909 minus 13,908. Are we on? Are we on?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Doesn't matter.
So, what we'll do is this. How you doing, kid? Are we on?
Yeah.
You wanna wait? Okay. What we'll do is this, we'll make it clear that anything you, don't understand, Craig or Patty, just, stop it, we'll go over everything. We'll take it slow and easy, and it's gonna be an interesting evening, so don't worry about it, and, any question you wanna ask, by all means, it's explanations, and it can get complicated. So, first order of business, minutes. You have some minutes?
These are from the dated March 29.
Thank you.
Corrections, deletions, additions, anybody have any comments on this one? Well, looks like it's pretty accurate. I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes of March 29th.
Motion made.
Second, all in favor?
Right.
Motion approved. So Patty, you'll just record the motion maker as Tom Bracco, second Ken Daly, and the minutes were approved. Those will go, I honestly don't know where to tell you they get filed, but I'm sure we'll find out.
I think she posts them to the website. She
Yeah, and
showed
then we
me
have
that,
a
and
file over there someplace, but I'm not sure
And
where it
Joyce
goes.
gets a copy.
And Joyce gets a copy, yeah. Okay. We need to reorganize this evening, first meeting after the town elections. And that means we need to elect a new chairman and clerk.
Well, doesn't mean we need to elect new one, or
Well,
new for the year, but
new for the
the
year.
same old faces.
We don't have much choice here unless we wanna go with the man who probably will never
Well,
accept that position.
I nominate you,
Yes,
Mr.
thank you.
Ritchie, as chairman, and your neighbor there, Mr. Bratko, as clerk. And Mr. Bratko might want to be informed that he was also asked to be the Wachusett Regional Planning Commission representative.
I knew that, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
You were absent that day.
Oh, was.
I didn't know if it caught up with you.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
So that's a motion, and
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Very good. Thank you very much, folks. Appreciate your
yes.
support by default, I'm sure, but nevertheless.
Do we get a raise now?
Yeah, I get a big raise. That's for sure.
No, you've done a good job over the years.
We
Yeah.
also need to sign the form for the registry of deeds. Greg, you signed it already, and Tom Robinson signed it already. These forms go to the registry of deeds, and when we have something that's going to be put on record with the signatures from the board, they double check whatever is on the document that's gonna be put on record against what we have signed.
Just one place?
Two places, top and bottom.
Two, oh, thank you. That's it? Does Mark have to sign it?
He has to sign it, however, he also has to be reappointed as alternate every year, so the next order of business will be to, if we would like Mark to continue as the alternate, we need to nominate him and send a letter to the select board asking them to appoint him.
Wasn't
I
he already
nominate
on
him.
the appointment? Last meeting, the select board.
I think you're
had
all set.
Yep. Appointed a bunch of, all these different things. I thought he was on that list.
I did not get any notification
Oh,
of
okay.
it, so
Why don't we go through the process, and if
Yep.
it's redundant, that's fine.
that's fine, yep.
I'll nominate him to, be
I'll
an
second that.
alternate.
All in favor of sending Mark's name on to the board of selectmen? Okay, great, we'll do that.
And if he said no?
He said yes today, I already twisted
Oh,
his
you
arm.
did?
And that's as an alternate.
As alternate member, yep. So. Patty, what else did we have for correspondence? Just the stuff that came in from the towns, exclusive of the information for the hearing.
Yeah, you look like you've been doing this job for months.
It's Janet and then, I'll give you that one first, that's the.
Alright, so
copy
this
of
goes into
that
the
letter.
hearing.
This is the other letter,
After the hearing.
that's the hearing,
Yep.
okay. I don't know if that's the same.
I think we're a month late on this one. All right, let me read this to everybody because this is a little booklet from Dick Heaton, who is our consultant for the Affordable Housing Committee and the 40B.
Everyone,
Hello.
hi.
And he sent
Sign
this, Oh, we need a sign-in sheet too, don't we? Do we?
We'll just make one up.
Yeah, make one up is fine. Name, address, and that should do it.
Use name, address, phone number.
Oh, maybe Betty.
Morning, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Couldn't be better.
Thank you.
So it's messy.
How are you? Good to see you again.
Good, nice to see you too.
So you said Dick Heaton, affordable housing.
He's our consultant for affordable housing and the consultant for the, yeah, affordable housing. And the master plan, that's right, and for the master plan. So we get this memo from Dick on June the 7th, and he's basically informing us of a new regulation. And it says, as you probably remember, the Department of Housing and Community Development has a regulation that allows a community to be exempt from 40B developments if 1.5% of the available land area is occupied by affordable housing. We worked on the calculation and determined that Hubbardston does not meet or reach the 1.5% minimum threshold. DHCD has now come out with a new, more detailed description of the process that must be used to calculate the 1.5% land area minimum. It is a 30-page description, which is attached, of the process. It virtually ensures that no community in Massachusetts will reach that threshold. From our point of view, among other things, the new policy changes the definition of land area for sustainable housing initiative units to include only the area that is landscaped and maintained. Specifically, for example, the Hubbardston Housing Authority is on 2.4 acres, of which only one area, approximately, that should be 1 acre, is maintained. So only the maintained area is counted. We had been counting all 2.4 acres in our calculation. When these new regulations are adopted, it will make it impossible for Hubbardston to achieve the land area minimum of 1.5%. There's an informal group that I am part that will object to these proposed regulations. We are drafting a formal letter to the DHCD stating the reasons for our objections. The objection is being drafted by a lawyer and will be extensive. It probably will not do any good, but we are looking for communities that share our opinion. I would like your permission to include Hubbardston in the report. The Department of Housing and Community Development is basically designed for two things. One, to assure that communities reach their 10% minimum goal of affordable housing units. And two, to make it as difficult as possible for those communities to reach that goal. And they do a good job at it, especially number two. Dick Heaton and the other group of towns that he represents has been fighting their formulas a long time. And it basically is a situation where the developers in the state have more control than anybody else has. So we're at that point where we will never be able to reach that minimum anyway, which precludes us from a 40B housing development. But it seems a bit unfair that they continue to do what they do with the community. So if we would like to look this over, we can either, I'm not gonna read this 30 pages, but this is the proposal, the way they calculate. And if we are interested, we can join that group that's going to protest the new regulations. And as it says, it may not do any good, but it certainly wouldn't hurt to join in on that. So anybody have any thoughts? Hi, Ed.
How much money do we spend with our consultants so that we were working in that direction to get to that percentage threshold so that we would be basically exempt from chapter 40B?
I could not give you dollars and cents, but it did not cost the town any money. Because what we did was entertain a proposal from Madison Green, when they had a minimum of 2 affordable houses that they had to build and sell, they came in and wanted a buyout. So we achieved $30,000, $15,000 per unit, which was dedicated to affordable housing. So we paid this consultant out of those funds.
Well, it didn't cost us anything, it cost us those monies
It did cost you money, but I don't know what
To-
it cost.
to now be in a position where we can't even get close to the 1.5% according to your.
Right.
But that's not the
your
fault
new
of the
analysis.
spending.
Huh?
That's not the fault of the spending. You can't see the future.
I did I fault anybody on the committee?
No, I'm not talking about a committee or anything, I said the spending.
Okay, I guess my question was, you know, we did all of that work and considerable work so we could get within the threshold
Mhm.
and not have a 40B problem, but now you're saying with the new legislation, we're not even gonna come close to that, so we
Right.
still have a 40B situation where, the zoning board of appeals would have to perhaps address a 40B project.
Correct. Let me sneeze first and continue.
Bless you.
God bless you.
God bless you.
I think what happened though, the money was spent to make the affordable housing, plan, what do you call it that?
Well, there were 2 phases. We did the study with the consultant on the 1.5%, and we also did the study on the, report that went to the DCHD and the rules and regulations that were drawn up for the ZBA. All of that came out of the Affordable Housing Committee funds that were dedicated from Madison Greens.
So we lost 2 units of affordable housing and basically now with the new regulations, it doesn't make any difference,
Right.
all of that time we spent on, and money spent on trying to get to that 1.5% threshold is
Right.
history.
Actually, Bill, there was an error made in the, somewhere between the assessors and the report. That the amount of land that they had dedicated to open space, like DCR land, was considerably more than everyone thought. Everyone thought that the DCR owned about 40% of the town, but they actually.
Was NBC DCR?
DCR, NBC DCR, same one, but they actually.
That's not true?
No, they own 32.5%.
How did that change so radically?
It hasn't changed, it was just had, the assessor's office, when Dick Heaton ran the report from the assessor's office, the report indicated parcels that the town, they counted some parcels twice, is I think how it happened, because of their coding. So any person reading the report who doesn't know the zoning, the map numbers, they would not have picked it up, so that's what happened. So it was a glitch.
But DCR has been paying us so much for their percentage of ownership of
Mhm.
Hubbardston as designated by the assessors. You're saying that was incorrect?
No, they don't pay it as designated by the assessors, they pay as designated by the state law that dictates that. And they have the exact acreage that they own.
So we're taking DCR's exact acreage versus our own exact acreage? Is that what you're saying?
No, they are the same, they are actually, the DCR and this town agree, the report that information was drawn off had some errors in it. Not the acreage has never changed. The report that they drew the information off of was in error, okay, the report.
Whose error was it?
I really don't know, I think it might have been the assessors, I'm not gonna say it was the assessors, I mean, they ran the report and the report had the incorrect information on it. It wasn't obvious to other people unless you lived in the town and knew about it, so. But we verified the numbers with MDC or DCR now, we verified it with the Fitchburg Water Department and all those places.
So if we had done that really prior to having the consultant come in, we would have understood that there's no way we're gonna get close anyway.
That's exactly right.
So basically, all of that time and dollars spent was probably not the best way to use our funds because of this error.
Well,
I wouldn't call it.
two things, have to be pointed out. Number one, it would not have been done without the affordable funds available and the hiring of a consultant, because it's a massive job to compile all those records, and I could not do it, nor could anybody else in the committee. And number two, the application of the survey results towards the 1.5% is a very obscure type of formula and method of doing it. I think there's only been one town in the Commonwealth that's achieved it. I think it's the town of Weymouth. But we thought we had a good chance at it, which is why we hired the fellow to do it.
And he
And-
was the one that provided all of the information, but I remember that very specific information that said, you know, if we do this, that, and create a few different things, we could get there.
We did.
So his information was incorrect.
Well, the information that he was able to retrieve from public records didn't match up with what was actually on the ground, I guess is the best way to say it. However, the net result did in fact benefit the town, because we did have the housing production plan that was produced, as well as the zoning rules and regulations, or the 40B rules and regulations for the ZBA. We also had that training seminar for all the officials in town. And again, it was all paid for out of the Affordable Housing Committee, which
And how much did we spend on that?
I couldn't tell you. We still have money left, but I couldn't give you dollars and cents
Well, we got a $30,000 stipend off of that fund.
off of Madison Green, yep, right. Ben's Pond, yep.
Thank you.
And we're still working on that with the affordable housing acquisitions that we're trying to make, as well as the improvements that we're operating on. And we've also had some funds designated for this effort through the CPA as well.
Why would we even bother if we're not close?
Well, there's two different things, because we're not close to the 1.5%
Correct.
exemption, but that still doesn't relieve us from our 10% obligation for affordable housing.
Correct.
So we're working towards producing affordable units.
Thank you.
Excuse me. So, I guess to continue the discussion, if we'd like to consider joining Dick Heaton's group, we could do that. We need to do it now, or wait till everybody has a chance to read this report. Anybody have a preference?
I've already read the report. I would say we wanna, I'd make a motion that we, join his group.
Well, it was sent to everybody but Craig, as I see on the top here. So you haven't seen anything yet, so. Won't cost us anything to join, so I guess it's 50-50. Did I get him?
I think so.
I'm not messing with you.
Always did have good hands. You might have the hair, but I've always had good hands. Anyways. If there's a motion to join Dick's group,
I'll
take
second
a
it.
second. All in favor?
And now,
Opposed?
are you comfortable with that, not having,
Well, he could abstain if you'd like. He could vote for, against, or abstain, and give you this as well.
Yeah, I would like a copy of it anyways.
Yep, no problem. Take that along with you.
So I will abstain then.
All right, motion carries.
You're gonna need this back then, or?
Whenever you get to it. We all have copies on the computer, like I said.
Do I have a
that was-
copy? Because I can forward it to you.
Can I see this?
Janet.
Yeah, it should be on there.
Yeah.
You
I can
would've-
forward, because I have your email. It's
Yeah.
Gmail, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just send you one.
Yeah, that'd be good.
And then you can.
Can I get a copy of that too,
Sure.
if I
I
have
think
it?
you got one.
I should have, but my computer is not working too well,
It's no big deal for me to resend it out if you wanna, if it's buried in your.
or a copy, I don't know,
They,
it makes no
they don't
difference.
have any. Yeah,
Alrighty, I think we're just about done with all the preliminary stuff. We can wait a minute and then begin our 7 o'clock hearing.
Wanna move that one up real quick?
Oh, you wanna do that? Okay, would anybody like to volunteer for the Montechusett Joint Transportation Committee representative.
I just wanna see it real quick.
Nobody?
I think we should.
Yeah, I think the
Is anyone here with highway experience?
I think, yeah, transportation, I think it's a fit.
No, let's not force him. We'll wait on that one. If we don't get anybody to volunteer, we'll get next month after he has a chance to feel more comfortable.
Don't miss a meeting.
When are the meetings?
We meet the first Wednesday of every month.
No, I think this
Oh,
one.
no,
Oh,
yeah.
for those meetings?
Yeah.
We don't know. They just need, they need a volunteer, but they don't tell us much about it.
They meet the second Wednesday of the month.
At the Mark Park in Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah, they might, well, not in Fitchburg anymore, they're at Doyle Center in Leominster.
No.
They just moved this last week, so.
Wow. Oh, right, it's there.
Begin July 1 through June 30. And that's about all it says.
That's where all the money for the highway money is divvied up. It'd be good if
Okay,
someone could-
Yep.
Is it, nighttime meetings or?
Yeah, it's an evening, it's 7 o'clock.
Who was that member last year?
I don't remember, I don't know if we had one.
Yeah, we may not have had
I
one.
think the highway superintendent went to a lot of them.
Oh, that's right, yeah, I think you were, yeah.
I'm not as fast as I used to be.
Tim Killer.
Well, let's do this. Let's set up a,
Let's see if I can get some information.
an
on
appointment for
the
a site visit. You wanna do that now, or you wanna do that later?
We'll do that.
Of what do we speak?
Of, the Cataisto pit. Oh.
Just give it-
All right, I'll entertain a motion to recess the planning board in order to continue the hearing for the, DJ Palm earth removal application.
So moved.
A second? Second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? So voted. So we're in recess now, from the planning board, and we're gonna continue the hearing on the travel permit for DJ Pond. Mark, you've had a busy day.
Yes, sir. Good to be busy.
Yeah, I guess so, huh?
I think you gave it to everyone.
I got your 20-page report at 6:05, so I apologize for not having
No,
the
2
opportunity
pages,
to.
2 pages.
2 pages, how come it printed 20? Must have been attached to the other one.
Your consultant had a lot of stuff.
Oh,
Mine
you had
came
2,
up
he had
20
18?
pages.
I had more than 18,
A lot? That figures.
but I double-sided it.
We know, Bill, you never said anything in a sentence when a paragraph will do.
I learned from you, sir.
Alrighty.
That's it, from now on, it's yes or no then.
Just like Lord.
I'd take bets on that one. Well, we're
Ready?
ready if you are. Continue
Uh,
this.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. And I'm, again, Mark Beaudry with Meridian Associates, and we are the civil engineers for the DJ Palm Nominee Trust earth removal application on Pitcherville Road. And I believe this is our 4th public hearing. We've also had a site walk, so we've had the pleasure of being with the planning board on many occasions to this point. So anyway, the one thing, Mr. Chairman, you mentioned there you go, a couple things that had been circulated this evening. We did have a letter that was more of a formality. There you go. I've got additional copies of it here too, that we simply kind of formally addressed to the board some things that have been going back and forth over the last week or so or more with your consultant. As you know, you had allowed us to you know, coordinate directly with the consultant to try to resolve some of the outstanding issues, and I think we made some really good progress as far as that goes. We did a little bit of housekeeping on the plans that, we had submitted a revised set of drawings. And, what I'd like to do, I've got 2 full-size sets for you, of plans, as revised July 5th. I've also got some small, sorry about that.
Small child.
Right?
So, these,
Thank you.
the plans you gave us back,
Thank you.
these are,
Yeah, I can walk through the,
no, I just wanna get rid of some clutter.
Yeah,
These are gone.
yep, that was the,
Okay.
well, I can't read that from here,
Yeah,
but
that
I
was the one
believe
you
it's
gave us the
the
last meeting,
May
yeah.
3rd set.
Yes.
This set, replaces that set.
Okay.
That's correct.
Just check that one out, so I
Yep.
don't get confused.
And besides the revision dates, as July 5th on all the sheets, what I'd like to do is, I can go through the drawings like really quickly as to what the changes are. And what I wanna do is go to the sheet 5 initially, which of the, was the first operation plan. You may recall that we had 7 phases of extraction that were proposed on the project site, and the various operation plans show these, the different areas. So basically what we've done is added some slope benching into the various grading plans, and that slope benching refers to a detail on sheet 11 that shows the 10-foot wide slope bench proposed wherever the height of the slope would be 25 feet or more. Now that's required by your regulations, and what we had done previously on the previous set is just kind of refer to the benches, but now the plans actually depict those benches and have the detail provided.
What page are those benches on?
Well, you can see the hatched area right here. You know, as you go through the various plan sheets, you'll see a hatched bench every place it's required. And then the details on sheet 11. So just as we flip through the plans, you'll see phase 2 has the benches, you know, shown here and here. Phase 3's got some benches here. Phase 4, and et cetera. And you can just walk right through the drawings. And anyway, the phase 5 did not require any benches. 6 has benches in here, and then 7 has the bench at that location. And which gets us to sheet 11 that has the detail on it. So another thing to point out is that there was a couple spots on the previous set of drawings where you may recall that our intent was to have all of the proposed work outside of the 200-foot riverfront area associated with Hubbardston Brook. And there was a couple that we 90% got there on the last set of drawings. There was a couple spots where it was, you know, frankly, it was a bit of a drafting error that showed a little bit of work still within that 200-foot riverfront area. The plans corrects that to show all of the work, proposed work outside of the 200-foot riverfront area to the east, and has a note on there clarifying what that intent is. And the areas, you may recall, that were remaining within the 200-foot riverfront area that were previously disturbed areas are going to be left as turtle nesting areas that was actually, you know, desired by Natural Heritage as, you know, to address the endangered species concerns to the east. So that's been clarified. So now we have no work within Conservation Commission jurisdiction areas. So as we've said for 2 months now, and even as far back as our site walk, and but now it's reflected on the drawings. Now, in those areas of the permanent restoration areas, I think we had talked about this last time, that there are some areas in there that are not practical to regrade to 3-to-1. All of the proposed extraction areas have 3-to-1 grading, plus those slope benches we talked about previously. In some of the permanent restoration areas, which, total about 7.5 acres at this point, there are some areas in there that are not practical to grade to 3-to-1. Your regulations allow slopes as steep as 2-to-1. So in places where we would always have slope areas no steeper than 2-to-1. Where we have slopes between 2-to-1 and 3-to-1, you may recall that the RMI material that would be used to, put a planting mix on top of the site and grow vegetation as part of the reclamation process. RMI does not want their material on slopes steeper than 3-to-1. So what we had talked about last time was going with and it was actually in our May 3rd letter, was to go with a topsoil with a traditional slope stabilization on those areas. Your consultant had asked for more detail on what that would actually look like. So we did add some information on those 2-to-1 slope areas and what the, basically it's like a erosion control blanket would be put on those areas that is now detailed on the drawing.
So Mark, if we're not gonna do any restoration in the riverfront 200-foot area,
Right.
what do we need from natural heritage on this? Are they giving us an exemption? They
Nope,
making any
it's-
statement at all, or just not?
Yeah, we had
impact?
included, as part of our May 3rd submission to the board, an email exchange that we had with Natural Heritage, which they are not, you may recall that email, I'll summarize it quickly, was basically the same approach that Natural Heritage had back in 2012 when this site was originally permitted. And they were not concerned about the vertical change in grade because the areas are already disturbed. But what they would want to be, eventually have some say in would be, how the reclamation plan occurred to, provide areas that would be suitable for turtle nesting habitat. And they wanted large areas of sandy areas. They mentioned even as big as a 1/4 acre potentially, that would be surrounded by vegetated area and have those sandy areas as, close to the river and wetland area, where the turtles want to hang out basically. So they would go in the vegetated area during the day and then at night move into the sandy areas to do their nesting and whatnot. So the Heritage said that they, we're not looking at a conservation management plan requirement, any kind of taking issue relative to the, species habitat. They just wanted to have some say in the restoration of the land to provide some habitat for turtle nesting. And so that's basically where Heritage stands. Now, they didn't feel it was necessary to do any further review at this time, but when it gets to a point where we're starting to look at restoration of those areas, they wanted to be able to look at the plans and potentially even meet the operator on site and come up with a kind of a strategy how to best do the restoration to suit the critters. So.
And I don't anticipate it, but would they have any concern about adjacent lands, abutters lands, or just, I don't know how?
I can't speak to any adjacent properties. If you look at the.
No, I know that, but I'm wondering if they have any concerns, if they've expressed anything to you.
Nope, they had only expressed, looking at this property, there's an opportunity, we're talking about restoring this property. They see that as an opportunity to, work with the operator to get the, some quality, habitat back into those areas.
Okay.
Yep, so.
You said earlier about it wasn't practical to change the slope, why is it not practical?
To go to a 3-to-1 slope.
Why is it not practical?
Well, it might, you know, require, doing more grading to lower that area. I mean, these slopes right now are fairly flat on top, but then they slope down away
Right.
from the area, so to get to a 3-to-1 slope, you would have to extract more material in that area to basically flatten that slope down more.
Is that because of prior excavation?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
prior excavation caused this problem to not be practical to be done now?
Going to a 2-to-1 slope is not a problem, it's consistent with your regulations. In 2 places in your regulations, it says that slopes shall be no steeper than 2-to-1. And we're not asking for any more than that.
And Heritage is okay with that also?
Yes.
They don't want it changed either, right? Is that what I heard you say?
They want it revegetated, yes, they want it revegetated, and they want it, large areas of sand left remaining. In fact, we had provided these plans to Heritage as part of that email exchange we had. And, so they had our plans that, before we even, did this additional work. And it resulted in the email exchange that we got. So, we've got a couple, clarification notes on here that, for one thing, you may recall that we had talked about the existing concrete debris that's on the property. There was a note on here now that addresses, that material. It's, the letter I provided didn't, speak to that specifically, because it wasn't, I don't recall that it was a specific comment, but, it has been discussed in the various hearings and on the site walk. And we do have a note in the plan now that says that material it will either be removed, or will be from the site, disposed of properly, or will be processed in accordance with the state's ABC rubble, regulations, and potentially could be used on site for something like base material for the Hall Road, for example. But it would have to be done in accordance with state regulations, which means, crushing it, and after testing, by the way, but getting it to at least 6-inch minus, removing all rebar, etc. So all that stuff is in the regulations. So we did address that material, so it could be handled and taken care of properly.
You would happen to know that regulation?
Not off the top of my head.
Thanks.
I can get you the site, though. I can get you the citation later.
All right.
Have you run that by the Board of Health yet?
No, I don't, no. It's something that you would have to notify the town and where the material is located on the site, if it was to remain on site. But, we're not convinced that's gonna happen at this point. We don't know. But we said it has to comply with the regulations, so if any notification requirements would have to be complied with.
ABC stands for asphalt, brick, and concrete, and the DEP has a policy on its reuse. As long as it's tested and it's found to be benign, in other words, it's not coated with chemicals or lead paint or something like that, they heartily endorse the reuse of especially concrete for exactly what he's saying. And my company recommends that on construction sites all the time. So as long as it's tested, and that's the note that's been placed, the reference to the regulations been placed on the plan.
Have there been any tests to date?
No. There has been, to be honest, some research as to where the material might have come from and how it got onto the property, and that has not been able to be determined. Apparently there's been some theories, but no proof or whatever, so it'll just have to be dealt with. So that is, the plan updates. Your consultant was privy to those changes, and that information was reflected in his final response letter.
Almost all
Almost all of it.
of it. I missed a couple.
So with me this evening, if you have any, questions for the rest of the team, is Ian Marinelli, Louise Brule, and attorney Mike Wiggins, who was here last time as well. And, in case you had any legal type questions and whatnot, as we move forward this evening.
Thank you. Mark, any questions for Mark?
I had one, I think, from the old days, and I'm not sure which occasion it was asked, and I remember asking if there was a opportunity to go see a reclamation in action. An RMI volunteered that they would get back to us and tell us where we could go, within reasonable driving distance.
I think there's some in Hubbardston, is there not? That work RMI's done in Hubbardston?
No, I
Oh, in
meant active
process.
site.
Oh, actively
Active
under,
site, yeah.
oh.
Remember I was talking, they had a brochure and they had the pictures of the bulldozers.
Right.
Excuse me, bulldozers and whatnot.
Yeah.
And,
I apologize that,
no, no,
yeah,
apologize.
we, I think that had been, slipped through the cracks, so to speak.
It's okay. If you can find one, the planning people always recommend you go look, So I'd appreciate the opportunity to go look.
Bill, do you wanna pick it up from there?
No, but I will.
I've got a couple of questions here first.
Okay.
I have
You
a,
wanna wait for Bill's report?
no, because it has to do with the
All right.
restoration. This restoration, I have a plan from ASE here, Andrews Surveying and Engineering Company.
Yes.
Dated 2011, and they recommended, or indicated on here rather, that 27.1 acres is gonna be restored, reclaimed. But you're not, is that the same area we're talking about? So,
All right, back in May,
I assume you're familiar with this.
I'm not familiar with Andrew's plan specifically, but there, it might relate to a different permit application for, as far as I know. The Meridian Associates was involved in the 2012 permit application and permit on this property. And so I'm familiar with Meridian's plans, but not ones that predated our work on the site.
Okay.
But there's, roughly rounding 21 acres of the various 7 phases that are being proposed
Okay, well,
to be reclaimed.
that's close enough, then, yeah.
Okay, well, there is other areas that are important to talk about, and there's other parts of this. We have the permanent restoration area that was on the plan, and then the temporary restoration area that we had talked about back in May on the rest of the property that will be, restored using RMI material on a temporary basis, because there was material here that could potentially be extracted at a future date. So if, obviously subject to a new and different permit. And what we, as we said back in May, those areas, the RMI material would be removed, stockpiled, the extraction work done, and then regraded, and the RMI material put back down. And that's what we were referring to as the temporary areas, which, between the active areas subject to the permit, the permanent restoration areas, and the temporary areas, that the site was covered. And because way back when, you may recall that there was a number of acres that were really not being accounted for.
Okay.
Now they're all accounted for.
Okay, that's where that 27 acres was, okay.
Could be the 27, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, good.
So Bill and Mark met this afternoon to continue on the discussion of the review of the proposals as well as preliminary decision writings. And if you wanna fill us in, Bill, that'd be great. Or pick
Okay.
it up wherever you feel
Yeah,
you
yeah.
wanna pick it up with.
So, what I did this afternoon after meeting with Mark is I revised, so for the benefit of the audience, we sent a draft review letter. The planning board chairman asked us to be prepared for the planning board to close the hearing, so we developed a draft, decision. And we have a third document, which is voluminous. It's got lots of different colors on it, so that we can keep track. This is our fourth review. So our first review, all the comments were in black. Our second review, all the comments were in red. Our third review, all the comments were in blue. And our fourth review, all the comments are in green. And while there are copies up here, if the chairman wants, they can be passed out or not. I don't really want to go over the voluminous letter because it really is just a historical document to say that they did this, we responded, they responded, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a chronology of the project. What I do want to talk about is the document that I put with a blue dot in the upper right-hand corner. So there's some up there. These, and Mark's pointed out a couple of things that I didn't get precisely right, but these are the things that both the chairman has asked me to do, which is the first page, talk about denial versus approval. And then the following pages are what I consider to be the outstanding items. And that's why I'd like to go over this letter, and it's not that long for me. First off, on the decision, we have a draft decision, and I've given you two options in the decision. The first part lists the chronology of events, all of the information that's been submitted to the board, both by the applicant and by my office. It chronicles the dates of all the public hearings, and then it has on it 3 or 4 items that say, we, the planning board, make the following findings, which you're required to do to find that the project meets the goals and objectives of the bylaws and can protect the environment and the citizens of the town. So on our decision, part of it is, the first part is a draft denial. And we give you some guidance points on the denial. And I'm gonna kind of follow that up. If you deny a project, you have to do so listing the findings and listing specific reasons why the project doesn't meet the goals and objectives outlined in the bylaws. We certainly don't want to come up with anything frivolous if you choose to deny, but we want to come up with a meaningful list of items, because it's the applicant's obligation or ability. If they can address each and every one of those, then they've overcome the reasons for denial, and it puts us into a different position. If we have a strong enough denial, then it makes the decision to appeal, and it makes the appeal, if there is an appeal in the courts, that much harder. So if that's the way the board wants to go, there's a whole lot more work that would be involved if you chose to vote tonight and voted to deny. We'd have to get town council, I would recommend you get town council involved, and we would have to supplement the findings of fact. So I went over that, and I spoke to the applicants that this is the speech I was going to give to you tonight. Then the following 6 pages are assumed approvals, and most of it's
You're in this.
I'm just talking about it at this point.
Yeah, but this is the document you're talking
Right,
about.
right. Most of it's the boilerplate straight from the regulations. So the meaningful stuff, if you choose to approve, would be the special conditions. What I did from what I sent out on June 28th is, in all of that were special conditions. I culled them completely out, so we have the regulations straight from the bylaw in there, so that somebody can't say they don't know. It's filed at the Registry of Deeds, becomes an encumbrance on the property. And then a lot of special conditions. So now, the special conditions are what I'm recommending to address some of the outstanding items that are listed on my cover letter, which is why I wanted to stay on the cover letter. Some of these items on the cover letter are your discretionary items. They're not a technical item for me to say, we agree they've met the obligation or not. And I defer to you and your decision-making powers on a whole lot of these. So I do want to go through the blue dot document. And Mark, when we come to the stuff that I didn't catch me on, all right? So on page 2, item Fi, the applicant's attorney has assured the board that they have legal rights and no overburdening of easements. I defer that to you, your decision. The plans require detailed access and screening controls They've revised, in the letter that they sent, they've revised a waiver. Simply stated, the site has to be screened from the street, and a variety of construction methods for the access driveway are spelled out in the bylaw. They're proposing to use the existing access off of Pitcherville Road. It doesn't meet the strict requirements of the bylaw. They've asked for a waiver, and the granting of a waiver to that regulation is entirely up to you. What would require is for them to dig up, tear up the asphalt driveway, regrade it in a downward direction, 200 feet back from the road, screen, and do all sorts of really substantial earthwork.
Would they have to have approval from the town to do that, since the town owns the land?
Probably a legal question, but we have a driveway bylaw.
But they would have to, that was a question, would they have to get approval from the select board? Or-
Yeah, see, that's a legal question, not an engineering question.
Okay. You don't know.
I suspect, yes.
Yeah, I mean, with the property being owned by the town, I would expect that there would be a, review and approval process.
They've agreed to supply emergency access signage, and counsel for the applicant says that the right-of-way that goes to the state land is not open to the general public, and that's not a technical engineering issue, so I defer any decision on that matter to you. Item H is really a sticking point, in that they state that the applicant reserves the right to bring material into the site to manufacture specialty products for export. And technically speaking, I consider that to be manufacturing. This is an earth removal permit. It doesn't address the creation of additional materials from imported earthen material or whatever. In addition to that, if the board feels inclined to agree with the applicant's position that that's a reserved right that they've always had, I think that whatever they believe that they have the right to bring into the site to mix and then transport off the site, if you don't agree that it's the use that I described industrial, then they should describe in explicit detail what that material is. You're in a zone 2, you're in an endangered species habitat, you're proximal to wetlands, you got all sorts of issues going on. We have a highly pervious soil. If they're bringing in materials, then that should be, if it's permitted, that should be provided to this board in every instance. Item I, they say that they're going to provide bottled water for their employees. I simply defer that to you and to the Board of Health. Item 3, we have addressed the slope stabilization, and specifically, Tom, 2-to-1 is in the regulations, and I went in great detail. Can I move your phone?
Absolutely.
I went with Mark back and forth over this on sheet 11. Of course. On sheet 11, he's revised his detail. And this is, in my opinion, an acceptable detail. So what they're going to do, they aren't just going to spread topsoil on a 2-to-1 slope and plant it with an aggressive planting. It's just not going to work. They're going to put an erosion control blanket, straw blanket. It's a decomposable blanket that decomposes over a period of time. So the plants can actually get their roots in the ground, stabilize the slope, and by the time the blanket decomposes, in theory, it will be a stabilized 2-to-1 slope. And I've actually achieved this in sand and gravels myself. Just to kind of go off topic, in the draft decision we have a special condition to allow whoever your inspector is to modify their erosion controls and modify their slope stabilizations. The other part of this is they propose no tree or shrub replications. So this is all going to be grass. Item K, I don't know that really there's a whole lot here. The RMI, I recall the RMI people saying their stockpile cannot be within the zone two.
Zone 1.
Zone one?
Yes.
Okay. So item K is, resolved. And of course, this is the big one, and I'll, for the benefit of the new arrivals, the traffic study. So, I'm not trying to paraphrase for the traffic engineer, but we read the traffic study, and he said that Pitcherville Road as it exists today is not safe for travel for gravel trucks. Remind you, he didn't do a traffic study, he did a truck traffic assessment. And he said Pitcherville Road as it exists is not safe, and improvements to Pitcherville Road will need to be made, as well as improvements at the driveway for line of sight, which crosses, as he depicts on his drawing, crosses private property. If that's the case, so this is the analogy I used earlier today. If a structural engineer walks into a building, looks at a beam and says, that beam is not safe, he is a registered professional traffic engineer. He says the road is not safe. In my opinion, the road is not safe. No different than the structural engineer saying the beam in the building is not safe, get out of the building. This project should not be able to proceed without the safety improvements being made to Pitcherville Road. Any improvements to Pitcherville Road potentially opens up a whole lot of additional engineering and permitting. And in my opinion, and in my firm's opinion, this must occur prior to any gravel removal occurring.
Bill, I have a question.
I'm sorry.
Just a question, real quick. I think if a structural engineer said to me, you know, that beam's not safe, I'd still say, why? You know, to have them tell me why. So did they say why?
He did.
Okay.
He categorized it. He, in specific detail, listed it in his report.
Thanks.
Couldn't see it, guy's a big man here.
Just hiding.
The applicant indicates that each phase will take approximately 1 year. You may wish to condition the approval to either allow acceleration or address deceleration, or leave it at 1 phase, 1 year. Item 8.1 is resolved.
Could you tell us how it got resolved? Please?
As he said, he took all the work out of the riverfront.
Ah, okay.
So, item 8.2 is the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program. I don't disagree with anything that Mark has said. He gave us, the chain of communications where Natural Heritage says this is previously disturbed, we don't count it, and that we will address this during the reclamation. But I've dealt with Natural Heritage throughout my professional career. They're a permit granting authority, as are you. They don't supersede your authority. You both have complementary powers. If they say it has to be done a certain way, I think that there is a reasonable expectation that the planning board should accommodate them, but I also think that you should know what's going on. So in the decision, if you choose to approve, we've included a condition that all correspondence between the applicant and Natural Heritage be copied to the planning board, so that you can foresee if Natural Heritage is concerned, or if Natural Heritage all of a sudden becomes aware of this site and thinks it's something different than they originally thought. They have independent authority from you, so it's not as though you can strong-arm them or they can strong-arm you. I think if the lines of communication are maintained, then that would be a very positive thing. Item 3 has been resolved. That's this item here. Item 4, the bylaws say that an earth removal operation cannot occur in a sensitive area. And it goes on to describe what a sensitive area is: natural heritage, endangered species habitat, wetlands, and those kind of things, zone 1s to water supplies. are all considered sensitive areas. So here again, we're not adjacent to, we're within a sensitive area. So I leave this to your discretion as well, because this was previously permitted. It is a vacant gravel permit. I think that a finding to address that needs to be made in either direction, yay or nay. And then finally, we strongly recommend that the Town of Hubbardston general bylaw for the importation of materials be included in any permit, so that it's explicitly included in this permit, so that everybody knows the importation of unsuitable materials is generally not allowed. Then I go on, not in this letter, but there is one other item that needs, I think, a little bit of discussion, and that's the use. The zoning bylaw does not allow a gravel removal operation anywhere in town by right. It's not allowed by special permit, it's not allowed in zoning, it's disallowed. So I've been struggling with trying to figure out, if the board wants to approve this, a mechanism to make that happen. And I've talked to some planners and I've talked to a whole bunch of other people. One of the thought processes is, this is a pre-existing non-conforming use. I think that we need to get from the applicant, and by the way, this happened after you left. We need to get from the applicant some sort of affidavit identifying when the last time gravel was removed from the site, so that it's a documentation of its pre-existing non-conforming status. And pre-existing non-conforming status expires after 2 years of not being used. And I seem to recall that the applicant said that some gravel had been taken off this site as late as 2015. Whether it's in conformance with a permit or not, I think that it could be considered a continuation of a pre-existing non-conforming use, and therefore it is allowed under zoning, which means you could grant this permit if you felt that that was an appropriate finding. In the opposite direction, you could find in the other way to say that this is not a use that's allowed under zoning, and that they've allowed that pre-existing non-conforming status to expire, and therefore it's not a use that's allowed, and that would be another finding in a decision.
If that's the case, the permit expired after, 2012 permit expired after 2 years. So it would have been 2014. If they were removing gravel in 2015, wouldn't they have been removing gravel without a permit and would not be a grandfathered use?
I don't know.
And the other thing is the chain of ownership of the property. According to the registry of deeds, the Marinelli family sold it to Hubbardston Sand and Gravel, whoever that person was, and they exchanged deeds, and they actually took it back in a foreclosure auction.
Right. So this is why I say, if a denial is being contemplated, town council has to be involved. And in fact, it works, the knife cuts both ways, because somebody can appeal an approval for cause, and maybe if the board is leaning towards approval, town council should review that as well. My job is to attempt as best I can to make sure the technical requirements of the application are made and guide you through the permitting, so that if an appeal is contemplated by anybody, it's difficult, because we've done our jobs right. I haven't caught everything, nobody will, but we've worked diligently with the applicant and been guided by the board as best that we can figure out. Did I miss anything, Mark?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Anybody on the board have any questions for Bill?
That was a lot of information.
It's okay, that's what we pay you for.
Well, just in general, this has been a long back and forth and submittals, and I'm wondering, what we really want to have is a firm foundation under us in terms of the information you've provided. Do we have just a list of everything that the planning board should be looking at to consider this application?
Mm-hmm.
We have such a list.
It's on your draft too, there.
Okay, I haven't gone through that yet.
Yeah, we haven't gone through the draft, the one that's got the watermark,
Oh, okay.
pink dot.
Oh,
Color
okay.
coding is so much easier.
Okay, so we have a record of
There are-
everything that we're supposed to be looking at to
There are
to make this
19
decision.
items that, excluding my commentary, there are 19 items that have been submitted by the applicant.
Okay, very good.
If you could just clarify, Bill, on your letter, that, it mentioned in, the fourth review comments in green.
Yeah, I'll fix that.
Yep. On page 2, item number 20, says revised plans, revision date 5/3/17. That's actually
Today's.
today,
Supposed
July
to be.
5th.
Yeah, that's the uncolor coded. The one I said that was too voluminous for us to go through. The one without a dot in the upper corner. So I'll correct that. Mark's a good proofreader.
Still my
Anybody,
job.
in the audience have any questions? Go ahead.
So if a notice of denial, is issued, and then, it's a two-part question, and then an appeal is made, who is the appeal made to?
Superior Court.
Okay, and so if the appeal is won, then all of the special conditions that would have been part of a notice of approval don't apply? Such as the road conditions and all that sort of stuff, is that correct?
My understanding is that any type of judgment that comes out of a court is at the discretion of the court.
Okay. But it's possible that,
They would take into consider, we would hope that if we had a presentation before the court, that we would make clear conditions that are necessary for town consideration, and they would respond to that positively. Yep.
Or the judge could remand it back to the planning board with specific direction.
If you wanted,
Well, there is an attorney present, so he could answer probably
if
better
you
than
want an
me.
example of what happened, the town was sued by the Fletcher Trust in 1997, and they sued the town, they denied Fletcher Trust, the town denied Fletcher Trust an earth removal, permit, and Fletcher Trust appealed it to Superior Court and lost. The decision is in the town office. If you wanna read it, explain what it said.
Ed?
Yeah, well, certainly it'd be nice to see a going operation, be able to restore a gravel pit and, you know, make it, according to our bylaws. My only concern is, I listened to Tom Robinson at town meeting, go into great detail on bringing in outside materials in order to, well, any outside materials coming into this town. And my only concern is that will this restoration be done with any outside material, with no outside materials, only things that are on site? Or if they're gonna bring in outside materials, who is the body who is responsible for making sure that these incoming materials are not hazardous in any way? And maybe you could respond to that, Tom, since you were the one that basically expounded at town meeting about how we needed to be so careful regarding outside materials coming into town.
Wait a minute, Ed, excuse me, Tom. Bill mentioned that in his report, that we're very specifically concerned, as you are, about the excluded materials that are on, that we have for a bylaw. And we've had reports brought in, and maybe Mark could comment on it as well, from the company called RMI. I'm not sure exactly what that stands for, but they have a whole recipe for their material that they use that would then require some kind of review to verify that what they say is true. But it has been used in town in the past, and it's been proven to be effective so far. So we would double check it for sure. And how would we do that? That's a good question.
Yeah, I wanna know
Yeah.
who the authority would be, and who's gonna do the checking of the materials
Right.
incoming. And because, Tom, you scared me very well.
I didn't mean to scare anyone.
Well, I think that,
well,
That's not the purpose.
It did that at town meeting, so that we have to be extremely careful coming in. I'd
Can I
love to
address
see
it at
a
a high
gravel
level?
pit restored and be able to be back in operation again, but, I think that, do we have the resources in town, or is that part of the permitting process, that, we make sure that whatever loads do come in for restoration are in accordance with our bylaws and not hazardous, in any way to the town house.
Mark, just go ahead, comment, then I'll let Tom finish up.
We had submitted, probably, 3 different letters, I think, at this point, as well as modified, updated reports of the RMI material, which stands for Resource,
Management Inc.
Management Incorporated. Thank you. And so what they included was, letters, from Massachusetts DEP, approving their various materials and what the makeup of that material is, sources of materials, et cetera. And, that's all included in their report. As far as, I think as far as monitoring it, there are requirements in the draft permit for, monitoring materials coming in, for reports being, issued at least twice a year, for record keeping. So, and again, RMI has done, other work in town already. They're highly regarded in town, is my understanding, and, are actually even recommended. Anyway, I think we can all have good confidence that the material is gonna be compliant with your bylaw, that is going to, be non-hazardous, that, is consistent with other, past uses in town. And from what I understand, I think your, alternate board member even said that you can grow grass on concrete using the stuff. So it's, it definitely, does the trick as far as, restoring the pit that we're looking to do.
Bill?
So it's specifically, they've achieved DEP approval for this material, Department of, I'm trying to remember, but it's a resource management. It's a 3-year continuing cycle, and they're certified. They have Department of Agricultural approval for use of this material for human crop. And they've demonstrated to Department of Agriculture in New Hampshire and Massachusetts, Maine, and they've submitted this information. They've submitted their certifications that it's a non-leachable, only mildly odoriferous process when it first goes down. Other than that, it's essentially inert. It doesn't really have a whole lot of fertilizer capabilities. Its great benefit is it provides bulk, it provides organic matter and water retention. So my office has done the follow-up in response to their information, and they gave us their reoccurring, they expire, the DEP certifications expire, it's either 3 or 4 years, and they're current in the states that I listed already. So this is a material that's both been reviewed and approved by DEP and Department of Agriculture in multiple states.
So all this material comes through RMI to the town?
Yes.
And RMI gives us a documentation on the material and its
Source
content.
material, yeah, they've already identified where their single source of supply is coming from. That's part of the material that was submitted to the planning board. Correct.
We do have it here, we do have a report.
The Board of Health just had a meeting with, a town residents gonna be using this on his property, similar, different company with the same type of product, and the Board of Health approved that project. They said they were very comfortable with that project, with that material.
And the use in town was up on Route 68 at Fall Line, the old Andrews Turkey Farm, where they reclaimed that, that's where they used it on that property.
It's posted no
Well-
trespassing, but it's amazing what they did.
Mike, do you have one other comment?
I was just gonna say that there's a stockpile of RMI material already on this property that could be readily used to, we're estimating that could, as soon as the areas are, regraded, could be, could almost immediately, reclaim probably 2 to 4 acres. And it's, so there is some, that material was allowed to be used as part of the 2012 permit on this property. And, my understanding is it was also used to reclaim, parts of the property to the west.
Thank you, I appreciate, your concerns.
You have questions still?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right, I'll do it.
Any other questions or comments? Sir, Mr. Wiggins?
Mr. Chairman, I just a few comments, I've just been listening to things tonight. One would be that the buyer we had found, Mr. Boucher, who was here in front of you before, is excited about the property, so much so that he's already invested quite a lot of money that he won't get back. I don't represent him, but I'm just telling you that because my clients don't have the ability to go through all of this engineering review, and he has stepped forward because he really wants to do it right. And he was here listening to the traffic engineer talk about what a disaster Pitcherville Road is. Nevertheless, after that hearing last time, he was excited. So, unfortunately, he can't be here tonight. I understand he had and this is Doug Hamlin, our broker, has been in touch with him, but he couldn't be here tonight, but I know that he's very interested in proceeding. I also know that from his description of his operations, that it's about as benign sand and gravel operations you're gonna find, because he won't be selling to major users like aggregate industries, and that was a problem, I think, in 2012 and 2014. It was sort of random chaos. When aggregate industry needed to make a bunch of concrete, they'd show up en masse, and they wouldn't be there for 6 months. Of course, the operator himself was a rank amateur, didn't know how to manage it very well, but it was also that the clientele that he was bringing in was a clientele that was ad hoc, and they would just, and as I understand Mr. Boucher's operation, it is a steady golf course type of operation and working with athletic fields. So he can plan it in a way that I think would be, the town would appreciate, and hopefully the neighbors would once the road is put in or fixed up. But I think it says a whole lot that he heard all of that and is still in this game totally. I'm sure he would be willing to submit a very detailed list of what he'd be bringing in. I see that there's a concern about stuff being brought in and disposed of on site. From what I heard from him, it's only going to be brought in to improve the mix that he'll be taking out immediately. So I don't think you're going to need to be worried about imported material that sits there and affects the natural habitat or the streams or anything like that. From what I just heard described, it was mostly just sort of bark and leaf material. And bark
I could be even more specific, Mike. We since the meeting this afternoon, we were able to get a list of, potential materials that we would like to have the board consider. It was, now, before I give the list, we don't know that Mr. Boucher is gonna be the operator of this pit at this point. Yes, he's very interested, absolutely, but I think this project, needs to stand on its own merits and be structured in a way that, somebody other than Mr. Boucher could potentially be the operator. But that said, the list of materials that we would like the board to consider would be peat moss, leaf compost, subsoils or unscreened topsoil, white sand. The source of that would be in Adams, Massachusetts. Redstone sand mix from Greenfield, Mass. Calcined clay, which is used to, Attorney Wiggins mentioned golf courses. One of the products that Mr. Boucher's company makes is for a red baseball infield mix, and that the red clay is used for the clay is used for that purpose. And then possibly expanded shale that's from a source in New York. So those are products that could potentially come in to be mixed with materials on site and then be all taken off. And obviously they're all naturally occurring materials that are non-hazardous, that would not be leaching into the groundwater.
What was the third one?
Subsoil or unscreened topsoil, to just get a little organic, into to the soil mix. If you're going to be, for example, making like a plant mix for like bioretention areas or something like that.
Are you making that as an addition to your application? Those that you're specifically saying those items you want included in your application? I mean, it was suggested to us that,
if the board was going to consider, allowing this as a, as we said last time, that the applicant has been doing, mixing materials on site since the pit started operation back in the 60s, and to make certain spec materials. And the material might come in, it's blended, and then the material goes off. It's not disposed of on site or whatnot. So if the board was going to continue to allow this as a reserved right, then because it's dated for over 50 years, then we would like, Bill, your consultant had suggested that we ask for a specific list of materials instead of having it be open-ended. This is our specific list of materials that we would like the board to consider.
do you have any copies of that stuff from the 60s on what they said they were doing? Do you have any documentation?
I personally do not have that. I can't speak for the applicant. We talked about this at length last time as well, so.
Well, one of the things I feel incumbent to point out is the fact that although Mr. Boucher's ideas have been well received by members of the community as well as this board, it is really not in front of the board to consider yet. He has made no formal proposals. The quote-unquote manufacturing process has never been defined, and it's never been part of this application. So our permit application is based on an extraction of gravel removal. So we would happily accept an amended permit if you would like to include that with Mr. Boucher's operation involved. You can evaluate how you want to proceed with that. But as it stands right now, although it's a great idea, we don't have anything concrete, and I don't think it would be fair for us to approve any plan with just a carrot on the end of a stick in hopes that something is going to materialize and become to fruition.
No, I understand. I think that's why Mark was saying we can't tell you precisely that he is the guy.
Right.
I mean, I can't stand up here and tell you that, but we think it's probable that if we got the permit, certainly he's the person, he would come in and do the amendment.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I'd like to read a couple of items.
I only comment that God knows Steve Boucher for a period of time and was involved with him with my permit, travel removal permit then on. And he is a quality individual. My only concern would be that if the permit is put forward, the permit doesn't say who the person would be, who would be
The operator.
the operator.
Mhm.
And the operators could change. And I guess that's my only concern. I think Steve is a quality guy and will do a quality job.
Yeah, we have that similar concern. Tom, any last comment?
Well, the question was asked earlier about, if I could paraphrase your question, is what's in the truck when it comes in? What we've heard throughout the permitting application process is the proposed material. What we've also heard is, for instance, on the property now, there's concrete and rebar and some other things from an unknown source. That obviously wasn't part of the old plan, that now they're having to deal with that somehow. You can also find records in the town records, Board of Health records and whatnot, on other pits that have mysteriously received truckloads of stuff that wasn't according to the plan. So while I respect the plans, what we as a town need to do is figure out how to find out about the actuals, what actually comes in December and March and April as this process goes forward. Other towns do that by requiring the applicant to post a website of the analyses and make that available to the public so that everybody can see what's going on. And something like that would be something that I would encourage exist. It puts the applicant, it puts the burden of cost and reporting on the applicant, and the applicant would have to report variances from plan, and it would be publicly available, and Board of Health could look at it, Planning Board could look at it, or someone we assign. You mentioned an inspector. I haven't heard much about that, but other projects like this use inspectors. They are usually paid for by the operating entity, but they represent the town's interest. I remember Mr. Brown talking about something like that. They called it a licensed site professional. Something like that. I'm not requiring that. I'm thinking about that and saying,
A licensed site professional would be reviewing hazardous materials potentially. We're not.
I know, I just
We don't
said,
wanna go there.
we're not, it's not that, but it's like that. But licensed site professionals do other things. So, dealing with proposed material, all we've heard is proposed material. A single truck has not arrived yet. We need to have a way of dealing with actual material.
Dan?
Yeah, Steve's operation's about as natural as you can get, just from knowing that industry so well. Is there any way that within the permit, and I understand the stuff that's going on here, between the party who's applying here, a operator who's not named yet, and all that sort of stuff, but can you name the products that were just listed by Mark here, and then also have a clause that say, because then they don't necessarily want to get hamstrung into that, because if a different operator has different products, can you have those products listed and then something that says any additional, the applicant needs to come to the planning board or wherever for additional approval in the future, you know, so there's half a plan right now, or more than that, that doesn't sound like it's gonna be too possible to happen, unless a little bit of additional terminologies may be put in there. Is that something possible?
It is possible. However, the glitch is that the permit application is for extraction of gravel. So, as I said, if you'd like to amend the permit, then those kinds of things can be considered and it can be permitted. But, you know, we're not there yet. Doug?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, you know, there are a couple of people that we talked that are interested in the property, and Steve seemed like a really good fit for it. And, you know, he's invested a lot of money to try and get to this stage. And I think the way I understand, you know, it works is, you know, the ladies get approved for the permit, and then the operator, that needs to be transferred, and that transfer needs to be approved by you guys. So Steve would need to come before you, sort of go over all the details. And I talked to him this afternoon on the way up here, and he has lists of how many yards of all the stuff he has would be coming in that he could supply you. He texted me this list that I gave to Mark here. And so, you know, he could make that presentation to you, and if you didn't approve him as the operator, then we would have to go off and try and find another potential buyer. But, you know, what we're trying to do is get the permit, because no one wants to buy this property, do anything with it until they have a permit to be able to do something with it.
We understand it.
Right, so, but I just wanna say one more thing. Cause I asked him about this material that's coming in, and I said, you know, they're gonna wanna know if it's safe. And he said, Doug, he said, this stuff all gets tested before we bring it in. He said, if I'm just scooping loam off of someone's yard or development to bring it in, he said, we test it, we send people out. He said, I spend hundreds of thousands of dollars every year having soil tested. He said, it gets tested, and then when it goes off to my customer, he said, it gets tested again. He said, so I'm wasting lots of time and labor if it's not appropriate going out. He said, we've even had people that have come onto our facility there and tested the soil all around it to make sure there's no contaminants with the soil. He said, the last thing I want is a lawsuit because I'm sending off material that's contaminated. So the stuff that's coming in, he said, it's clean, it's good, and he actually said there's like big pads of concrete he makes on the ground to do all this mixing, and then they scoop it all up and off it goes. So it is a much, it seemed to me, as you described, is a very safe, contaminant-free type of business he's running.
Well, that's good, and no one's challenging his veracity or, you know, his character. Everybody here has been more than happy to receive his proposals. However, we haven't had any.
Yeah,
And that is a glitch, and as I said to Mr. Wiggins, you know, if you want to amend the permit, then it's a consideration, but right now, it's a carrot on the end of a stick that
Right.
would be great, and that's where we are. Ed?
Well, I'm a bit confused, because if we passed a bylaw that said all of these materials, and they all have codes and that nobody understands, the usual person anyway, and we have all of these that cannot come in, then the assumption would be anything other than those could come in. So if that's a logical assumption, then I would say that the only thing we need to do to protect the town is to make sure that everything coming in is not those that we have said in our bylaw can't come in. So then it doesn't become an acceptance of a list, it really becomes an acceptance of that bylaw that you put forth that says these are the only ones that can't come in, and therefore, if they're not those, then they can come in. And then I think the only thing after that becomes, what's the inspection process for the town to make sure that what they're saying coming in is not those ones that we say can't come in.
Right, okay.
I don't know.
I disagree with that.
Well, it's not worth it.
Sorry.
Okay. I've got two remarks that I'd like to read into the record that I received by mail. You guys have one if you like. One is from Matthew Cludier, a resident at 6 Underwood Road in Hubbardston. And Matthew writes, there is to the Hubbardston Planning Board, there is no financial benefit to the town to reopen the gravel pit. Property values of all the residentials in the area devalued, negating any gravel pit property taxes collected. The area residents get negative money drained for putting up with the gravel pit operations. Residents' devalued properties bring less resale money, less insurance payouts for any total losses, lost money invested in their houses from the time of purchase. The proposal to bring in organics for blending with on-site gravel is structurally identical to what the proposed asphalt plant applicants wanted to do, that the town turned down for a zoning change. If the planning board now permits this blending operation, the pit owner can apply for a change to asphalt plant, which is the same thing. If the planning board denies application, a quick appeal to Superior Court will likely get them overruling the planning board denial. The organic trucked-in material is any material nature-made, not man-made. The organics can and likely will include agricultural wastes. Manures such as cow, horse, chicken, swine will be trucked in and blended for nutrient-rich mixes. There's no time limit on how long the organics can be left here to decompose and degas from odors. The entire northwest part of Hubbardston will be contaminated by the organic waste stench. Anything organic or otherwise trucked in could be contaminated with toxic waste, inadvertently or deliberately put into the organics. Corrupt businesses could insert their waste into the organics unbeknownst to the gravel pit operators. There is no way we can test for all the contaminants in every truckload. We don't have the money nor the staff to do it. The sample truckloads would have to be dumped and left here while the testing is done over the next few days. This would further contaminate the air with smells and groundwater with organics and any toxic contaminants. If the planning board permits this gravel pit and blending operation, it will likely become corrupted as mentioned above. The corrupt political machines of Boston and other cities, with their corrupt businesses generating toxic wastes, will expect to continue sneaking it into the organics brought here. Money talks and gets actions in the big cities. We will get no help from the MWRA because the gravel pit operation isn't in their water. This long-distance gravel pit blending operation to serve the Route 495 area into Boston areas goes against the state mandates to reduce greenhouse gases and to be energy efficient. Trucking product to buyers up to 75 miles away pollutes the air, clogs up the Route 2 corridor with noxious diesel truck exhaust, and makes Route 2 traffic more dangerous and destroys the road surface rapidly than already exists. Parentheses, Route 2 is the most dangerous highway in Massachusetts. Close parentheses. This type of destructive, noxious trucking, extraction, organics blending operation isn't allowed in the affluent towns and Boston, where the finished blended product is sold. They wouldn't tolerate the destruction to their environment and the organics odors 24/7. We should not allow the use either. I urge the planning board to reject the application for this proposal. The immediate neighborhood has been devalued constantly by these gravel pit operations for the past 30 years. Now the pit owners want to start trucking in outside organics, wastes from areas of the state and elsewhere, into Hubbardston. Say no to the application before you. We need to encourage reusing the gravel pits with uses that will benefit the nearby neighborhood and Hubbardston generally, such as some pit owners are doing with solar farms. Please enter this entire email content into the public comment input record for this hearing. Feel free to use and incorporate this information as your own in your decision-making statements, reposting on any comment boards, in whole, in parts, in any manner considered beneficial to informing the residents of Hubbardston about this application and disposition of same. Sincerely, Matthew Cludier, 6 Underwood Road, Hubbardston, Mass. And we have a second letter from Mark Dimmick, 57 Pitcherville Road, who writes, "Dear members of the board, as I cannot attend your meeting this evening, I would like to offer the following comments. One area of major concern is enforcement. It is not clear to me how the town will be able to monitor the operation of this proposed project with regard to truck traffic, hours of operation, and work in process. As we have heard at the meetings and as evidenced at the site's visit, despite the last owner having a permit, the hours of operation were ignored. Truck traffic was an issue and demolition debris was hauled into the site. Should the board issue a permit, I would suggest the following conditions. Along with the recommendations by the board's consulting engineer and standard conditions, limit truck traffic except for local deliveries easterly on Pitcherville Road. That the maximum amount of material to be removed per day to be 400 yards. The suggested road improvement by the applicant's traffic consultant should be paid for by the applicant and completed prior to the start of the operation. In addition to the traffic consultant's recommendations, as Pitcherville Road continues to be developed and used by many, the road should be widened at the applicant's expense from the pit to Route 68 to accommodate pedestrian and bike traffic. Sincerely, Mark Dimmick." And those will go into the record for the hearing. Ed?
Yeah, I'd like to only say that, you know, all of these landowners have rights. And all these landowners have paid taxes on their properties for years ongoing. And some of those taxes have been based upon the fact that they are gravel pits or not vacant land. I say that, I'm not sure of that, so I'm not positive, but I believe that is the case. they've been taxed according to the fact that they are gravel pits. Well, if that be the case, you know, these people have rights to utilize their land and their property. And as long as they do so within the laws and regulations of Hubbardston, then I don't see how anybody else can, you know, I mean, we have a right to inspect, we have a right to control, but we don't have a right to stop people from being able to have an operation within the bylaws of our town.
What about the people's rights that live on that road?
People
Well-
right who live on that road?
We're not gonna debate those rights, we're gonna take into
Those-
consideration.
Those rights, the people can say whatever they wanna say.
Exactly.
But they're a landowner, just like these people are landowners. And as long as they, as landowners, live within the regulations of the town, we all should be equal, whether we're residential or commercial.
Which is
And
why
I've
we
been
have
on the
zoning
ZBA for a
bylaws
lot of
and,
years.
and general bylaws, correct.
And you know what, it's not about public, not a lot of public upheaval, or someone doesn't like something. It's all as a matter of fact, as what are the zoning laws of Hubbardston, and are they within those laws? And if they are, then they have rights, just like everybody else does.
And nobody on this board.
You shouldn't take away a commercial person's rights just because they're commercial.
No one on this board is suggesting as such.
I didn't say they were.
Yeah, no, I'm just reiterating that, you know, Mac Doody has his opinions, and that's fine. Well, so here's our question. I'll ask Mark if you would like to continue this hearing.
On what? Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
And if so, we have another scheduled hearing next Wednesday, and then we will not meet again until September. So if you would like to do so, if you have anything else you'd like to bring up, or if you think that Mr. Boucher would like to be part of the permit application with some type of amendment, if you can do that in the week, or if you'd like to consider us to consider what we have heard so far, we can close the hearing, or we can continue.
Can we have a few minutes to talk amongst ourselves, the team, to,
Sure.
I'm not gonna make that decision on my own.
That's fine.
So maybe we adjourn for a few minutes, 5
Sure.
minutes?
We'll take a
Okay.
5-minute recess.
All right, great, thanks.
I'll get there first.
That's why I asked.
was
she's
very
doing
good.
okay.
She was organized.
Yeah.
Let's real quick, didn't we get some of the plans,
Yeah, that worked out well.
Yeah.
Well, it was funny because I
She
sat
was
for
on
2 days of
notice.
training,